Welcome everyone to my podcast. Today I have Alyssa Byars-Miller on here. Some of you might recognize her with her Dobermans. I think she's the queen of Dobermans, especially with Anubis. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into dogs.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. So I have been in dogs since about 2012. I started working professionally as like a kennel tech, like doggy daycare type person until 2017 when I finished college, and then did an internship with wild animals. And in that process, they had kind of like a working dog on site that they would let out at night to protect the animals, and PETA and stuff would come. So they always had to, have somebody out there on guard. And that dog, I loved, right? Like, because I had worked in daycare and boarding around pets. Like, I didn't really have a lot of experience with like working dogs or anything beyond that. While I love dogs, I didn't really think like my career could really have just boarding and daycare and be okay with that. So then after I saw that there was such thing as working dogs, and like there was a trainer that would come and work with that dog, and I was like super inspired by that. And he actually offered me like an internship, but at the time, like learning about dogs, but at the time it was in California, and there was like fires, and like apartment like would be crazy expensive, and he wanted to pay me nothing, and it was like it wasn't feasible. So then I came back to St. Louis and I went to dog training school there instead. And then that was kind of the start of like training dogs. So in 2018, I finished school, went and worked in like a commercial kennel as a dog trainer, and then eventually started my own business. And then in the process of all of that, like mostly at school, I learned about sport dogs. So then I was really inspired by, the IGP, by the PSA. But the PSA really seemed the most entertaining for me, or like what kind of drew me the most initially. So then after I got out of school, I got a Doberman to like do that with.
What drew you to Dobermans?
So being in the day camp setting, I liked them, right? Like the pets that I had that came in that were Dobermans, they were my favorite. Whenever they would come, I'd get excited. So I like had it appealed to me in the pet sense. And then when I was gonna go to school, I went and toured it, and I was like, I think I want to get a Doberman to take to school. And the instructors were like, don't do it. Dobermans aren't good. They don't win things. Like, don't make your life harder, type of thing. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna wait, because I don't think that's like a good note to start on, like going against my instructors' advice. So I got like a German Shepherd and a Malinois to take through school. And then I was like, as soon as I was done, almost, it was like a month after school, I went and got an Anubis, and here we are. He was my first sport dog, really. Like, I had my school dogs, but those don't really count. He was my first sport dog, first real working dog. So that was really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I recognize and remember you because it was 2022 Nationals. My husband and I were sitting on my living room floor with Chick-fil-A, like an in-home picnic, literally like like a blanket and everything, just watching it live streaming onto my TV. And you were the only team that passed the level 2 out of all of the mouths. I don't know if there are
It's
any shepherds
shocking.
or what other breeds, but out of all the mouths, I thought that was super cool, and I've always remembered you from that. So congrats on that. I know it was a while ago, but it's still a huge achievement. Um,
Thank you.
introduce your personal dogs to us.
Okay, so yeah, I've got an Anubis. He's the one that has a PSA 2 and an MR1, and then he's got the Doc Junior and all that too. He's 5. And then I've got Relic. He has a PSA 1 and in the first leg of his MR1, and a brevet. I got at 4 years old. So, and he's 6 now. So he was kind of a little bit different. I've got Uma, who is 3.5. And she is the one that I did AS with. I have an AS1 on her, and now we are like dabbling in Mondio with her. So that's the hope, is to maybe do an MR1. And then I do have a Dutch herder. So he's Malinois mostly, but he's got a Dutch Shepherd in there, so he's Brindle. And he's 2. He has a PDC. And then I've got my little puppy. Well, he's not really that little anymore, but he's 12 months old. He's Anubis's son, that I'm going to be bringing up in PSA, hopefully, too. I've got some pet dogs, but they just kind of hang out and hold down the couch. We've got 8 Nine, nine, nine.
It's so funny
That's a lot.
because I'll see the same thing. When you have that many, like honestly, some days I have to really think about it. And like I'll start
Counting.
counting. Yeah, I'll start counting. I'll be like, Simonala Kiki. Yeah, I say like 8 and a quarter because I have eight, like we have mostly shepherds, and then I have my husband's Dutchie, and I have a Chihuahua, so she's like the quarter. So we have eight and a quarter. I feel like getting a Nubis as your first Doberman and your first real sport dog, I think he's just such an awesome dog. I feel like a lot of people start off with like, a not so great dog, maybe, but I mean,
Yes.
obviously, a good trainer has to bring out the genetics. So, but the genetics are obviously there. So, you guys are an awesome team.
Thank you. And yeah, and I find like he is good in spite of me in a lot of ways because I did make a lot of mistakes. And, Jesse, my husband, he's our primary decoy. But he learned on Anubis too. He had never done anything. So like we're all learning together.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is as good as he is kind of impressive because we weren't that skilled, especially in the beginning. We've learned, and we
Yeah.
definitely like at the time I didn't really realize I was warned about the limitations of Dobermans, but I didn't realize, and especially after getting Anubis, I think I was a little bit spoiled because then after that it was hard to like find other Dobermans. Like I was like,
Yeah.
well, they're not all like that. Like they
Yeah.
are finicky. They're not for everyone. So it could be hard to find a good one. But
Yeah.
um
So, what has it been like competing and training with Dobermans in PSA and Ring and American Shih Tzu?
so again, because like Anubis thankfully isn't that different, right? Like his progression and trajectory and his drive profile in general is a little more like a herder than you will sometimes see. So I was kind of lucky in that where I don't think we had to do necessarily anything breed specific or where I feel like, oh, he just struggles because this is his breed and not just because it's like just a problem people have. Sometimes there's a late, like especially Anubis, he's like 90 pounds. He can sometimes have a lazy streak about him when it comes to certain things, and he's not quite as fast, like he's not a little rocket of a Malinois going downfield. But ultimately I don't feel like that has affected us all that much. Now dogs with different drive profiles is different, right? Because I feel like a lot of Dobermans struggle in PSA specifically because they have a much lower defensive threshold
Yeah.
and lower prey drive. So
Yeah.
like even when they say like, oh, I have a high prey drive Doberman, it's like not the same intensity and possession as like a high prey drive German Shepherd or like something like that. But then the low defensive threshold and the low avoidance threshold is really what makes it so that a lot of them don't succeed. Because when you get to that high pressure, a dog that's feeling defensively, for one, if they do engage, it's not going to be very clear. Like the grip's probably not going to be very good. The out's probably not going to be very good. And then in PSA, there's so much secondary control around decoys. Like if you have a dog that thinks it's fighting for their life out there, like that's not going to be very clear either.
Yeah.
So I find like Jonathan Katz's method of raising the dog's defensive threshold gradually through training can actually work really nicely with Dobermans because like a lot of people, yes, they have, that threshold there, but like we don't really want the attack on handler or like, like these things to actually tap into it.
Yeah.
So that's where I find that a lot of them will struggle. And not only like the dogs, the trainers, like a lot of the trainers will try to train them like they would a typical herder, and then they might struggle too.
Yeah. Was it you who made that like chart with drives and stuff like that on Facebook?
That was Savannah, which is my
Okay.
breeder, like the breeder of Anubis. And yeah, that was interesting with like the thick and the thin, right? Because like you could have a thin nerved dog that's going to be very courageous in that, right? Like when they're like that is what courage is. It's like in the
Yeah.
face of danger, in the face of threat, they're gonna act forwardly. But then especially Dobermans, like they ride that line, right? So it's not like flee, like you get the avoidant aspect of that because it's not very empowered. And like PSA specifically, they're not super like it's harder to find trainers that are very balanced in aggression and prey and actually know the difference between like aggression and defense
Mhm.
because like a lot of them just like mix the two like oh this is the same thing
Yeah.
when it's not, and then the dogs are in some type of like they feel like they're in danger instead of just feeling like it's a rival or it's a threat or it's a social aggression type of thing.
Yeah. I find too that a lot of people think that even just going down to innate drives. A lot of people don't realize that there's prey aggression, that just because a dog is, even this isn't obviously the same as what we're saying, but just because a dog is civil doesn't mean that they're working in defense. Like a lot of
Uh,
people just don't understand those things, and if they don't understand them, they probably shouldn't be working your dog. um,
yeah, right. And
so
just like the fact that you see them reinforcing it improperly, like if it's true defense, the reward is the avoidance and the helper, the decoy, right? Like
yeah,
it's not so the avoidant, like you don't see that nearly as much. Like I see just mostly like prey movements that are reaching for the dog's face, and the dog is like, I like snaps at their hand for reaching, and then they're like, ah, and like that's channeling to like a lot of people. But it like you said, it's prey guarding, which prey guarding is a part of the social aggression, right? Like dogs, like, and I think that's where people think of it wrong too. Like they think the dog is always acting in self-preservation when they're in aggression. And sure, to a threat, like look amongst a pack of animals that are living together, right? There's a social aggression that is more based in ritual and rivalry and maintaining rank, like maintaining dominance and certain privileges that has nothing to do with like life sustaining. Like
yeah,
like they're not trying to save their own life. They're actually seeking out a fight a lot of times
yeah,
to preserve something, right? And so you'll see like, and I think my favorite kind of dogs is what I would call like dogs that have a lot of fight. Like it's not, it's like a combination of the two, right? Like they've got that good prey drive, and if they can be combative when they're when there's a threat shown, but they're not like fear biters, type
yeah.
of thing. So yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, they just muddy that all up, and I for a long time didn't really know the difference either. I would like interchangeably use aggression and defense when they are different, and like people do, the high activity in the car, which is awesome. But the funny thing is, PSA, they don't really like my dog squeal like so, like my Dutchie out the window, and they still gave me full points for the barking. So your dog doesn't like, that's the funny thing. It's not like IGP or AS where it's like the activity and the barking is going to be nitpicked to a
Yeah,
point where it matters, and that's the nice thing
yeah,
that I kind of like about PSA is it does appeal to the prey monsters, and I love prey monsters. So like
yeah.
that, it's a perfect sport for me because it appeals to the kind of dog I like.
Would you ever own another breed moving forward? I know you have different breeds now. Would you,
Yeah.
and what breed?
I'd probably just stick to Dobermans and like Malinois types. Um, my next one will probably be a Doberman because I'm hopefully gonna have an in-house litter. But then after that, it'll probably be another Malinois, or I kind of want to try like a green dog for my next Malinois instead of a puppy, just to see like what that's all about.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be fun.
So, what would you recommend for someone that's looking into a Doberman breed?
So, first off, find a breeder that is breeding for what you want, because there is quite a divide in Dobermans. Like, right, show lines, we've got our working lines, and then you kind of have like pet lines, like American pet lines. And not that you can't do it with them, right? Like, you see some show dogs that can do work. But in general, it's like if you find a dog that's bred for what you want, you're going to be better off. And then, like, specifically in that, then you want to look for like good dogs in the pedigree that have like nice health. Obviously, they've got good working characteristics, but the health is huge. Like the breed is sick as a whole. I think it's like 8 now is the average, but if you take like Eastern European, it's 6 is like their average lifespan.
My God.
So yeah, it's not good. 60% of the breed ends up dying of DCM or getting DCM, which
Oh
is
my gosh.
cardiomyopathy. Yeah, it's really bad. So that's why it's so important to dig. Like, don't just take the dam and sire's health tests. And the health tests you want to look for, obviously, are really important too. You want to look for echo and holters that are every year. Some people even do them twice a year, especially when the dogs get older. But that's to check the small signs that their heart's enlarging, or they're having some type of arrhythmia where there's a change in the electrical impulses in the heart. And so you want to check that in the dam and sire, but also siblings. Like, I think people kind of forget about that, because you might have a dog that itself has not presented any DCM, any inkling, right? And it's 7 or whatever, but its entire litter died at 4 of DCM, right? So it's like that genetically wouldn't be what I would want to go for. I would personally look for low cases of the actual DCM. Now, the genes, people argue about the actual genes because they have found now 4 different genetic markers that could show some association with getting the disease. And so some places they're completely, they're like, my dog's clear of all 4 of those, so I don't need to Holter an echo. And that's just not true, because there's so many times where the dogs will still go on to be clinically affected by DCM with none of the markers. And oftentimes you actually see more of that because a lot of times like those Eastern European breeders just banking on the genes, so they're not doing what they should. So definitely dig into that if you can look up the siblings, litter mates, and also go deep into the 5-generation pedigree and see how long are these dogs living, what are they dying from, make notes of it all, and then once you've assessed the risks, say, okay, like we're dealing with Dobermans who are already, it's hard to find working qualities, and then now you're gonna have to go find one that's healthy. Our pool gets very small, so some people will prefer one or the other, right? They're like, well, I'm more likely to go get a dog that'll live to be 10, or they're like, I'm going to get this banger that line bred on this other banger, and even though the dog dropped dead, their parents dropped dead at 5, I still want a banger, and so they go and get it. So it's kind of like, what's more important to you?
I know.
No, they don't. It's kind of crazy. And then obviously, like any breeder, any breed, like how are they keeping their animals? How many litters are these females having? Like I personally think, like 4 or 5 seems appropriate, but like there's some that they're just popping out litters every heat cycle. Like
That's
not,
ridiculous.
yeah, that's not fair, to the
Yeah.
dogs. So just normal like breeder ethics type stuff.
I don't see a ton of Doberman stuff, but I feel like whenever I do see posts like from people I don't follow or just being shared, it's like their Doberman died of DCM, and it's just terrible. It makes you so sad for the breed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the breed itself is obviously not great odds. And that's where looking at specific lines can really help. And like, yeah, some people will argue like, there's some really popular sires, like Eastern European popular, like Serbian type popular sires that have produced like, thousands of puppies and like, no one's health testing. And then like high percentages of these dogs are coming back with cardio deaths. So there's also a level of transparency that they would need to have and that you would need to trust that they have, because some of them will hang papers, like health papers, on their dogs. They'll lie about like one of the most popular sires who kind of contributes to DCM is like Cedar Dalmastie. Like Dalmastie is kind of like, it could be iffy depending on the mother line and like what, but they lied about when the dog died. They didn't even announce it for a full year, So like there's things like that where it's a little bit shady, especially like Eastern European, where it's like when you really trust necessarily the health tests that they say. And so that's why some people will steer clear of those kinds of things too, just so they don't really trust it.
I know we already touched on it, but how did you feel when you were the only team that passed at the nationals and being, an off breed? I'm sure you felt awesome after that.
Yeah, I cried actually. I
I
actually
bet.
haven't cried. I haven't cried tears of joy like very much at all. And I did, and it actually still makes me emotional thinking about it because I really didn't think I would. Like, and that's the funny thing is because I have so much like behind me of people telling me like the breed's not good, like you'll never be able to do it. Like I've always thought like I can do it, but internalized some of that self-doubt and like definitely felt like I feel like an underdog sometimes, coming out there. And so that's how I felt coming out there. I was like, there's no way. Like, look at these teams. These are amazing teams. Like Alyssa and Zig. Like these, just like they were all like Hazel and Alicia.
Yeah.
There's these awesome teams out there. I was like, I just really want to show my best. Like I'm not
Yeah.
preparing to try to beat these people. And then it's funny that everyone like it just kind of like some people the scenario beat them. Some of them they couldn't handle it. Like I think there was a couple they just like pulled early, or like the stress of like all the components of this it just kind of fell apart. But I was shocked. But that's one of the things I love about PSA is because there's room for underdogs to win. Like some other sports, it's not like that. It's very
Yeah.
like pointy, like a little half a point is dividing you, and it's a small little thing where it's like there's plenty of years where no one passes, especially in the threes, like no one passes at nationals, or just passing will get you winning
Yeah, right.
because it's there's surprise aspects. You can't plan for everything, and you can just hope that your dog is prepared enough. And when there's variables that no one plans for, underdogs can win. It's really cool. And I think even cooler was like how many people were inspired by that. Like I would not have thought, but I got so many people messaging me like, I feel like I can do it with my Doberman now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. And so like I feel like, I don't know, it was a good experience. I'll always remember it.
So, are you a pet dog trainer?
Yes, I own my own pet training business. And that's actually why I can do all the things I do, because I purposely will make my schedule that way. Like I won't schedule so many dogs that I can't work my own. I block off a month that I know there's gonna be a bunch of trials. Like I don't think I could have as many sport dogs as I could if I didn't work from home as a dog trainer.
Same here, and same thing. My husband's also a decoy. He's my main decoy. He works all my dogs. I was actually looking at your page before. Your husband, he actually worked my dog Jersey at a trial in Chicago. Like,
Yeah.
was this 2 years ago?
Yeah,
3?
he told me that. Yeah, and he knows your
Oh,
husband.
oh, awesome!
Or
I didn't
he
even
he
know
went
that.
to a camp with your husband, I think,
Oh,
too.
maybe it was the decoy cert.
Yeah, yeah, actually I think that's what it was.
Do you have any upcoming litters?
I will have my first in-house litter, hopefully early next year if all goes well. I had a benchmark female come actually yesterday to do a board and train for PDC, and then we're gonna do a litter with her and Anubis, which I'm really excited about because it's going to be slightly line bred on some really good dogs in his pedigree that I think have really contributed to who he is. And so my hope is that we'll get a bunch of little Newberts, little Anubises.
That's I like that. That's so cute. I love that. That's super exciting. My friend has two Dobermans. I told you one he's trying to sell. The first thing I said to him when he got the second one, and I was just like, "Is that a benchmark Doberman?" Because I only knew of that kennel, and obviously Anubis does really well at representing for her kennel. But yeah, I'm gonna definitely tell him about your litter because
Is
hopefully he
it
will.
Zach?
Yeah, Zach.
I
Oh
think
yeah,
he knows a little. Yeah,
yeah, I love Zach.
I know him. Yeah,
He
he's
works for Helen
he's awesome.
Canines. Yeah, he's such a good guy, and he's an amazing trainer. He has
Yeah.
really good training, really nice obedience, and he's going to be certified decoying hopefully like within the next year. Okay, so do you prefer floppy or cropped, and docked or long tail? I was trying to make that like rhyme, but it didn't.
Commit to one or the other. Like what I hate is ears and no tail. Like that's the worst. Like
Yeah,
if they already have their tail docked, just do their ears and make it match. Like it kills me. But like Relic, he came because I bought him as an adult. He came to me natural. He's got a tail and ears. It doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, aesthetically, I prefer crop to dock. I like that look, but like, there's no difference. Like Relic, he functions the same. The only kind of funny thing is like pictures, whether it could be a plus or a minus depending. But like I'll get those funny pictures with his ears straight up, like it jumps and stuff. It's like so to some people that might be great. To others are like that doesn't look menacing at all.
okay, and then someone asked if Dobermans are common in Mondio.
Not super common. I only know a few. I mean, Maureen Haggerty is probably the most popular because she's got the three. She's got two that had an MR3, and then she's got one now that has a one. So she's probably the most popular. I know there's one other Mondio Doberman down in Oklahoma or something like that, but it's not super common. But the sport is also kind of, especially in the U.S., small. I think there's only like 500 members nationally, so it's
Yeah,
there's not definitely not very many Dobermans because of the small sample size, but
I love Mondio. I wish it was more popular.
continue to
PSA is
grow.
killing it. It's social media is one of the biggest reasons why PSA has just exploded.
Exploded. Yeah, it really has. And PSA really challenges the dog a lot.
Yeah,
Where like Mondio, I think of it more as like a trainer sport where like, the trainer makes the points. Like it's not necessarily like you can take a dog that has some considerable weaknesses and get them through Mondio with the right trainer. Where I feel like it's a lot harder to do that in PSA because of the degree of the pressure and
yeah.
stuff. But Mondio has its own challenges where you would be surprised. Like I think I saw there's a PSA 3 dog that failed his French ring brevet. I think it was TJ. I was cracking up because of little things, right? It's not because the dog he lifted up his elbows in the absence and like
Yeah.
there's just they'll nitpick you, so you'll quickly eat points, even though that picture to some might not look like, oh, the dog's not head up heeling or they're not perfectly perfect in precision and high and drive or whatever. And they're not as often in Mondio. They look a little bit more capped in their obedience and stuff. But that's because it has to be perfect. Like every little chew, you're getting pointed, every little push in, kind of thing. I think French ring and Mondio ring seem the most limiting. Like if you were going to compare to IGP or AS or PSA, like PSA, they love smart handling. Like they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, do what you gotta do to make it happen. Like
Yeah.
Mondio, like if you're not standing there like a statue with your hands to the side, you can't drop your whistle until the dog's back. Like there's like such specific things that you're like, don't move your arm or you'll fail. You're DQing. Like it's like there's no room for handler. You can't even recommand. Like
Yeah.
you got your healing or your defensive handler, which you could be doing a defensive handler, especially in Mondio. It's really long sometimes. And if your dog deviates, you can't tell them defense or like come back or anything. Like your dog deviates, you're done. Like they're
Yeah.
gone. Like at least in PSA or a lot of other things, you got 3 shots to make it happen. So
I know.
that's the challenging part.
I always make the joke to anyone who's like, "Oh, my dog has an outing problem." I'm like, "Well, good thing you have 3 tries." Will you be showing in the threes with Anubis?
I have already,
Oh,
yes.
you have? Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. So he is currently injured. He injured himself earlier this year towards ACL. But
Oh no.
last year we showed 3 times. There's one time we did pass obedience, and then we missed one. We passed all the protection areas, and so one we missed by like 4 points. And so we
No.
were like, fine, no. And then after that, I've never gotten past obedience because he just bites when he's not supposed to. So hopefully we will be all healed up and like built up to a point where we can either trial later this year or early next and get back to the threes. And then I'm hopefully going to be doing the twos with Relic this year. We're training for it, so my hope is by fall to get into the twos. It's so different, but you still feel like you could somewhat prepare. I don't know how to explain it. Like the threes are so frustrating because you feel like you've trained so much and then you could still be so far from prepared. It's that balance act. Like all sports are a balance act, but like especially PSA, especially because they love flipping stuff on their head. Like I think I saw a couple times ago where they set up a courage test stay. Like the dog was gonna stay. I think it was like nationals maybe in Arkansas. Your dog leave your dog to stay, and now there's going to be a full blown courage test, like with a bag toss and everything, and your dog has to completely hold it stay. So it's like you've been training that picture over and over again with a bite, and now you have to do the opposite. They even flip that obviously with the redirects and how all of like the call offs, you got a decoy next to you now and stuff. So I find that's especially like it was helpful listening. I don't know if you know the Controlled Aggression
Yeah.
podcast. As a first time dog handler and not that experienced in PSA, I really listened to that and I treated it like my Bible, like bringing him up as a puppy because like I was like, oh, this is the godfather of the sport. Like who better to listen to than with him? And he'll warn of things like, don't teach your dog this. Like don't teach your dog to send a guard until after the one because they
Yes.
don't need it. Like what's the point? Now your dog might have a passivity issue or don't send your dog on a seated decoy until after the ones. And like you will see people do that. Like they'll put their dog in a stay in like a reward bite on the seated decoy. It's like,
That
wow,
trends
okay.
me.
Bold. um, but like there's like little nuance there, or like exactly like too much neutrality. Is your dog gonna engage on the attack on handler instantly? Like because they might think, oh, this is healing. So like and especially with Dobermans, like I err on the side of like less control. Like I kind of let them be crazy.
Is that a Great Dane?
I'm at my mom's house. This is my mom's dog.
I was like, what? Who is that horse? Um, okay, so this is the last question. Someone wants to know what do you enjoy more between Mangio, PSA, and American Schitzen?
Which was my favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, PSA for sure. Yeah, the other two are just I would say like I dabble. Like so I've for the last 4 years I've trained with a decoy, Joey Morris, and he's a Mondio guy, and so that kind of fell into my lap. more than anything, I was like, oh, well, my dog has these behaviors, and like I train with Amandia, we're like, well, let's do it. Let's do a defensive handler. Let's make it happen. So
Yeah.
that kind of came, and then AS was just kind of like I wanted to try it and like dabble and stuff, but PSA always has my heart and will. So
You're doing PSA with your up and coming puppy?
yes, yes, and I might do like a little Amandia with him too at some point, but mostly gonna do PSA with him.
Yeah, that's exciting. I saw the video that you just posted of him today. He looks super, super nice.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited about him.
Well, thank you everyone for joining, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.